Exactly. And staying along that lines of coaching, our next gone but not forgotten individual is somebody that I would love to have played for. He was selected in the third round in 1964 NBA draft. Played 2 seasons with the Boston Celtics. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. From 64 to 67, 6'10", 270 pounds, John Thompson went on to have a stellar career playing with Bill Russell, Casey Jones, and some of those type of players, and then going on and making his mark in the world that's probably very, very difficult, Division I, going to Georgetown and coaching the likes of Patrick Ewing, just to name one player that he's coached.
Allen Iverson.
Talks about John Thompson.
Well, hey, John has known me since I was at Carolina because he was a good friend of Coach Dean Smith. But when you said that weight, 270, I see why John only played 2 years in the NBA. You can't be 6'10" and 270.
But it's back in the 60s now. You know, they do a lot of
that's still
running.
Too heavy. Hey, come on, Coop. Everybody back then was thin and skin and bones like me and you. You know, 270 is a little bit too heavy. But as a coach, you know, he gets big respect. You know, I remember, you know, Dikembe Mutombo and Alonzo Mourning, who I coached. We talked about John. I remember one time I asked Alonzo, I said, Zoe, why don't you have tattoos all over you like a lot of these guys? He said, Bob, John Thompson would have killed us. He didn't play that stuff. And when you thought about it, it's like when Allen Iverson, when he was at Georgetown, he didn't have no tattoos. He got those tattoos when he got to the Philadelphia 76ers. But John was a no-nonsense type of coach. I know he learned a lot from Coach Smith at North Carolina. They were very good friends. John had the opportunity to coach the Olympics. He was the first, let me know if I'm right or wrong. He was the first African-American that won an NCAA championship.
Yeah.
Okay, I was very proud when I saw that, because when you see one coach do it, you know that we belong in the coaching profession. So that's what John Thompson brought to the table.
You know what? The thing I like about him, and like I said, I wish I had the opportunity to play for him, is that his ability to let players be players out on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, as a young black player coming up, you always want to have that opportunity, because again, for us coming up in the 70s, okay, going to Mexico, we were kind of like controlled a little bit. But it looked like his players had fun. They were very, very disciplined players, and he was true to the student athlete. The one thing that I learned as a college coach for women, I coached women at the USC, I had a 89% graduation rate from my players, which is pretty high for back then. And again, for men and women, it's totally different. Coach Thompson had a 97% graduation rate among his team. He was very, very disciplined for these young men, not just to play basketball, or that old saying, use basketball before it uses you. He really got them to do something, because he knew one day basketball is going to end. And what are you left with? You left with that thing on your shoulders and how smart you are to go out in this world and still be a significant part of it.
Well, that's big too. 97% at a prestigious school like Georgetown. You know, I mean, if these guys were not basketball players, more than likely they wouldn't have been able to have gotten in Georgetown. And for them to get in as athletes, and for most of them to, stay for those 4 years and get that college degree from Georgetown, that's really big there.
He also, after coaching, he was a really good broadcaster. Like, I remember listening to him on games, and he just, he has that very deep, iconic voice. And I mean, he was just, sometimes it doesn't translate when you're a coach or a former coach or a player in terms of analysis of a game. And he's just so good at breaking down things and making it sound easy. Like, it was just such a natural, it just seemed like whatever he did, he was good at. And he's the type of person you want to aspire to be because of his work ethic and his ability to, his aspiring for greatness. And, I think, especially when you think of modern coaches in college basketball, he's got to be one of the most influential modern coaches that we've seen in college basketball.
Well,
Yeah, he is. He is. If I know John. If I had to rib him on something, I couldn't. An announcer, a coach, I couldn't do it. But if I had to rib him, I'd say, John, 2 years NBA, really? But that's my way of having fun with him.
Right.
I think for me, the one thing I always remember him by, again, and watching those games and listening to him talk about the game of basketball, because as an announcer, he talked about the finer points, the details of basketball.
Yeah.
And everybody can see how high you can jump and dunk and shoot from. But he talked about people setting a pick, guards using the pick, those little finite details.
Right.
But for me, it's going to always be that white towel over his shoulder.
Yep, the towel.
Walking up and down that sideline, looking and posing. And I think sometimes he did that because he scared the other team. If his players didn't have that oomph, he had it as a coach.
Well, I got one image that I'll always remember from Georgetown. I don't know if you guys remember it. They played North Carolina in the championship. The game was coming down. They had to hit the last point. They had an opportunity. And I think it was Freddie Brown was dribbling, and James Worthy, he threw the ball to James out of the side, not paying attention, and James dribbled the clock out. And I remember John Thompson grabbing Freddie Brown and putting his arms around him in a moment that was just devastating for Freddie Brown. I'll never forget that. That was really something for a coach to do. When he put his arm around Freddie Brown, he made probably the worst turnover he could have made in the game when he gave it, to James Worthy for North Carolina to win that championship.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, dude. I mean, great coaching is understanding how to coach individuals in a given moment. And, that's one where you think, here's this imposing 6'10". I mean, he was an imposing dude, and you'd think he'd be, upset laying in. And you're right. It was like a moment where he needed to be held, for like a better way to put it.
Exactly.
7-time coach of the year for the Big East, NBA, NABC coach of the year in 85, UPI coach of the year in 87, 3-time Big East coach of the year, so on. Basketball Hall of Fame inductee in 2006. Another one gone, but not forgotten. Coach John Thompson.